Welcome to Module 2 of the Vision Pillar. Before we talk about writing a vision, we need to answer one important question. Is vision really biblical? As we look at Scripture, the answer is yes. God gave Abraham a promise. He gave Joseph a picture of a future he could not yet see. He gave Nehemiah a burden that became action, and he gave Paul an assignment that shaped the direction of his life. In each of these four cases, God showed them something beyond their present circumstances. But Scripture also warns us that not every vision is from God. Tower of Babel is a perfect example of misguided vision. People can have a plan and unity and still be moving in the wrong direction. So the question is not simply, do I have a vision? The key question is our vision surrendered to God? Habakkuk 2 gives us another important principle. Write the vision, make it plain, because vision needs clarity. And once God gives us direction, we need faith and patience while we wait for the outcome. That's what we'll explore in this module. We'll look at Abraham, Joseph, Nehemiah, and Paul. We'll examine the difference between God-given vision and human ambition. And we will learn what it means to write the vision, carry it by faith, and wait without losing heart. So before we ask, what is my vision? We first need to understand what biblical vision is. So let's begin. What if imagination is not childish? What if imagination is one of the most powerful parts of being made in the image of God? Before a house is built, someone sees it. Before a business is launched, someone imagines. Before a ministry begins, someone carries a burden that becomes a picture. Before a family changes direction, before a leader steps forward, before a community is restored, before a calling becomes visible on the earth, someone first sees something that does not yet exist. That is vision. Vision begins in the unseen before it appears in the seen. And this should not surprise us, because this is the very pattern we see from the very beginning. In Genesis chapter 1, God created with vision. Before there was light, God spoke. Before there was earth, God did not create randomly. He created according to intention. He created with design. He created with purpose. And then Genesis tells us that mankind was created in the image and the likeness of God. And that means we are not merely creatures who react to what already exists. We are created with the ability to see, imagine, form, design, build, name, cultivate, and steward. There's something in us that can picture a future before it arrives. There's something in us that can look at disorder and imagine order. You can look at brokenness and imagine restoration. We can look at emptiness and imagine fruitfulness. We can look at a life, a family, a ministry, a business, and begin to see what it could become under the hand of God. That capacity is powerful. And like every powerful gift, it can be used rightly and wrongly. And that's what we see in the story of the Tower of Babel. The people came together with one language, one purpose, one shared vision. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower." But their motive was not surrendered to God. Their motive was self-exaltation. They said, "Let us make a name for ourselves." And God saw something very important. He saw that unified imagination, language, and effort could produce tremendous results. Genesis chapter 11 says if they continue as one people with one language, nothing they planned, proposed, or imagined to do would be withheld from them. That is a stunning statement. God was not saying their hearts were right. Their hearts were not right. He was not blessing their ambition. He was interrupting it. But the passage still reveals something powerful about the way he created humanity. When people can imagine together, speak together, work together toward a shared future, they can build with astonishing force. That's why vision matters. Vision is not a small thing. Imagination is not a small thing. What we form in our minds eventually shapes what we build with our hands. The Hebrew word often connected to this idea is the word yetzer. It carries the idea of something formed, framed, shaped, purposed, and imagined in the mind. That is powerful because vision not merely is a passing thought, but vision is a formed picture. It's something shaped inwardly before it is expressed outwardly. That's why we must guard our imagination. Our imagination can become obedient because imagination can become babble, or our imagination can become obedience. It can be used to make a name for ourselves, or it can be surrendered to glorify the name of God. It can build towers of pride, or it can build assignments of purpose. It can serve fear, ambition, greed, and self protection, or it can serve faith, obedience, love, calling, and kingdom impact. So, in this module, we're going to look at vision as a part of how God created us. Vision is not foreign to the Christian life. Vision is part of the image of God in us. God made us with the ability to see beyond what is currently visible, to imagine what could be, form a picture of the future, to align our words, our choices, our actions around that picture. But the key question is not simply can we imagine? The key question is who is governing our imagination? Is our vision surrendered to God? Or is our imagination being shaped by His Word? Is the future we are forming aligned with God's purpose? Because the power of vision is real. The Bible proves that. But the purpose of vision must be surrendered. That is what God is after. He does not want to destroy our imagination. He wants to redeem it. He wants to sanctify it. He wants to align it. And He wants the inner picture of our heart to come into agreement with His purpose. So as we begin Module 2 of the Vision Pillar, I want us to hold this truth. Vision is the God-given ability to see a future that does not yet exist, and then align our lives with God to help bring it forward. The Bible shows us the danger of vision without surrender. Genesis 1 shows us the beauty of vision under God's authority. And our calling is to take the imagination God gave us and bring it into agreement with the one who created us. That is where God-given vision begins. We are laying a biblical foundation for vision. We're not treating vision as a self-help idea or motivational slogan or a human attempt to force our own ambitions into the future, but we are looking at vision as something that begins with God, is clarified by faith, and must be received, written, and carried and obeyed. Habakkuk tells us to write the vision and make it plain. That instruction shows us that vision is meant to be clear enough to guide our movement. If it's cloudy, confusing, or constantly changing, it cannot lead us or anybody else very well. So in this module, we will see that vision in Scripture often begins long before fulfillment appears. God shows the picture before He completes the work. That means vision is deeply connected to faith, patience, obedience, and endurance. We will look at the biblical examples of people who carried a future picture before they saw the full results. Abraham, Joseph, Nehemiah, and Paul each teach us something important about how vision works. They show us that true vision does not begin in pride, but it begins in God. It calls us forward. It stretches us beyond present circumstance, and it teaches us how to keep moving even when the outward evidence has not yet caught up with what God has spoken in our hearts. So by the end of the module, the goal is for us to see vision as a biblical principle that shapes how we live, decide, wait, and build. Our goal here at Success Map is implied in our name. We want to help you create a map for your success. Habakkuk chapter 2 gives us one of the clearest biblical statements about vision. Write it, make it plain, and carry it in a way that supports movement. Or as the scripture says, that they that read it can run with it. Then we move to the source of vision. Real vision begins with God, not with restless human ambition alone. Critical distinction, because many people chase impressive goals that were never rooted in their calling. Next, we look at biblical examples. Scripture gives us a living picture of people who carried vision long before they saw fulfillment. Abraham walked by promise. Joseph held on to a future picture through betrayal and delay. Nehemiah carried a burden tied to rebuilding. And Paul lived with a gospel assignment that shaped every major decision he made. Then we connect vision to faith. Because many times vision begins before there is visible evidence. That means the future picture must shape the present before results appear. And finally, we talk about waiting without losing heart. Vision requires endurance. There's usually a gap between revelation and fulfillment, and how we live in that gap matters deeply. Taken together, these lessons help us understand that biblical vision is not shallow positivity. It is a God-centered way of seeing, believing, writing, and living. Habakkuk gives us one of the great foundational statements about vision. The instruction is simple, but it is profound. Write the vision and make it plain. That tells us at least three things. First, vision must be captured. Second, vision must be clarified. Third, vision must be communicated in a way that supports movement. Many sense something in their hearts, but they never write it down. Because it stays unwritten, it also stays unstable. Changes with emotions. It becomes cloudy under pressure, and it gets lost in the noise of the everyday life. Writing the vision forces us to name what we are seeing. It forces us to move from a vague impression to a clearer statement. Then Habakkuk says to make it plain. That means vision should not be unnecessarily mysterious. It should be understandable. It should be simple enough that any person carrying it can act on it, and simple enough that others can grasp it if they need to run with it too. We're building a team. So confusing vision does not produce strong execution. This is why clarity matters so much in this success map triangle. If the vision is unclear, every plan that follows will be weak. But when the vision is written and made plain, decisions begin to line up. Sacrifices make more sense. Priorities become easier to identify, and movement becomes more intentional. Habakkuk reminds us that vision is not merely something we admire, it is something we write, clarify, and carry forward. Understanding biblical vision is important because many people use the word vision to describe any strong personal desire. But biblical vision is not simply writing something. But biblical vision is not simply wanting something badly. It is not merely ambition with religious language added to it, but biblical vision begins with God. That does not mean our personality, desires, gifts, and burdens are irrelevant. God often works through these things, but the source still matters. Mere human ambition is centered on self exaltation, comparison, image, or control. It asks, how can we rise, be seen, win, or prove something? God given vision feels different. It carries stewardship, it carries responsibility, it carries humility, it carries the sense that we are responding to something larger than ourselves. Difference changes everything. If vision begins with ego, then pressure will usually produce manipulation, hurry, or discouragement. But if vision begins with God, then even ambition is purified into calling. But if vision begins with God, then even ambition is purified into calling. Our work becomes an assignment rather than a performance. And that's why prayer, surrender, and listening matters. We're not trying to invent a vision impressive. We're not trying to invent a vision impressive enough to give our lives meaning. We're trying to receive, discern, and respond to the future God is putting before us. In this success map framework, this matters because the rest of the plan must serve something holy and clear, not just something impressive and noisy. When vision begins with God, it becomes an anchor and guides our whole course of life. Scripture does not leave us with theory alone, but it gives us examples. Abraham is a picture of vision through promise. God called him to leave what was familiar and move toward what had not yet been fully seen. That is vision. It is not full possession yet, but it is clear enough to obey. Joseph was a picture of vision under pressure. He received a future picture early, but the road between revelation and fulfillment was painful. Betrayal, slavery, accusation, and delay did not erase the vision. They refined him while he carried. Joseph teaches us that the presence of hardship does not mean the absence of true vision. Nehemiah is a picture of vision tied to burden. He saw the condition of Jerusalem and was moved deeply. But his burden did not stay emotional. It became strategy, prayer, planning, and rebuilding. Vision often begins with a holy concern, but it must eventually move into ordered action. He saw the condition of Jerusalem and was moved deeply, but the burden did not stay emotional. It became strategy, prayer, planning, and rebuilding. Vision often begins with holy concern, but it eventually must move into ordered action. Paul is a picture of assignment driven vision. Paul's life was organized around the gospel mission that was entrusted to him. He did not drift from opportunity to opportunity without orders. His calling governed his travel, his suffering, his writing, and his endurance. These examples remind us that vision is not abstract. It is seen in how people move, endure, build, and obey. Biblical vision is a future picture that becomes strong enough to shape the present. These lives show us fulfillment may take time, but vision can still guide faithfully long before the final results appear. One reason vision matters so much is that it works hand in hand with faith. Many times, God gives a picture before he gives full evidence. That means vision must often be carried in a season when circumstances still look incomplete, small, resistant, or even opposite. Faith is what allows us to live in agreement with what God has shown us before we can fully touch it. That does not mean denial of reality. It means reality is no longer interpreted only through our present limitation. We begin to see the presence through the lens of God's promise and direction. This changes our choices. We study differently when we see a calling in front of us. We sacrifice differently when we know why the sacrifice matters. We endure differently when we believe the present is not the whole story. Vision gives the picture, and faith gives us strength to keep taking aligned steps. Without faith, vision will feel unrealistic. But without vision, faith will feel directionless. But together, they become powerful. We are responding to what God is revealing and moving in agreement with that future. This is one reason vision is so foundational in our success map. It allows us to make present decisions based on future clarity rather than only current difficulty. Faith keeps that vision alive until what is unseen begins to show up in real life. This final lesson brings us back to one of the hardest parts of vision. That's waiting. Many people can get excited when they first sense direction, but the real test comes in the gap between receiving the vision and seeing it filled. And that gap feels long, quiet, and stretching. Habakkuk reminds us that even if the vision seems delayed, we're not to abandon it in despair. Waiting is not wasted time when God is involved. I say that again. Waiting is not wasted time when God is involved. Waiting often matures it because it deepens our trust and it exposes impatience, pride, fear, and false expectations. It teaches us how to stay aligned when quick results are not available. This is especially important because we often assume that delay means that we misunderstood God. Sometimes that is true, and sometimes it is not. But delay alone is not proof of error. Abraham waited, Joseph waited, David waited, Paul endured many hard seasons, and delay is often part of the process of which vision becomes strong enough to carry the weight. So the question is not only did I receive a vision, the question is also can I carry it without losing heart? That is a spiritual issue as much as a strategic one. We need trust, endurance, and steady obedience. As we close this module, the takeaway is clear. Biblical vision is not merely a burst of inspiration. It is a God-given future picture that must be written clearly, received by faith, and carried patiently until the appointed time. That's why vision is foundational. It trains us to live from God's future in the middle of today's process. The central truth is that vision is deeply biblical. It is not merely a success principle borrowed from motivational language. Scripture shows us that God reveals future direction, calls people to write it clearly, and teaches them to carry it by faith until the appointed time. This matters because the rest of the success map depends on it. Mission, core values, development, and strategy all become stronger when vision is biblical, clear and grounded in God rather than impulsive or ego. If we misunderstand vision at the start, then every later step becomes weaker. But if we understand vision as a God given future picture that must be received, written, and carried, then the entire course gains a stronger foundation. Vision is not always immediately fulfilled. It is why endurance matters. God may show the future before the present looks ready for it. In that gap, faith keeps us alive. If we misunderstand vision at the start, then every later step becomes weaker. But if we understand vision as a God given future picture that must be received, written, and carried, then the entire course gains a stronger foundation. Vision is not always immediately fulfilled. In that gap, faith keeps us aligned, patience keeps us steady, and clarity keeps us moving. Next, we will move from biblical foundation to personal discovery. Once we understand what vision is and where it comes from, we can begin asking how to recognize the vision God is placing in our hearts. That transition is important because revelation must become personal if it is going to become practical. But if we understand vision as a God given future picture that must be received, written, and carried, then the entire course gains a stronger foundation. As we finish Module 2, remember this: biblical vision begins with God. It becomes clearer through prayer, surrender, and faith. And sometimes we have to carry that vision before we can see the outcome. Before we move on, I ask you if you would take a few minutes to complete the review questions. You'll find them on the upper right side of the lesson page, and you'll see 2 downloadable resources. One is a printable PDF. If you like keeping physical notebooks, you can print it, write your answers by hand, and keep it with your Success Map materials. The second option is a fillable HTML form. If you prefer to work digitally, you can type your answers directly into the form and save the completed file to your computer. Choose whatever format works best for you. The goal is simply to capture what stood out to you and give yourself something you can return to later. Module 2 gives us the biblical foundation for vision, and in Module 3 we will begin making this personal. We'll start looking for the vision God may already be forming in our heart. And again, thank you for your investment in your God-given vision. So we will see you in Module 3.